You know much about pickling? You ever pickle a vegetable before? What do you mean, what do I mean? You ever take a vegetable and pickle it? No? You want to learn how? All right, I'll show you. I'll show you. All right, thanks guys, appreciate it. Got an audience. Full house, my ego is jacked. Hey, here we go, thanks people, thank you. Very much appreciated. I was feeling really lonely up here. Okay, I'll begin. This demo is about pickling. And when it comes to vegetables, we all have an impression that pickling is somewhat complicated, whether it be getting the vinegar right, not making it too pickled, whether it be should I boil it together first with lots of sugar, how do I store them, you know, what do I do after the fact, because you usually have a lot of it. So there's kind of a bit intimidating. There is a lot to it. So I'm going to kind of chop it all down and make it incredibly simple. All right. So a lot of people think that pickling actually takes a really long time for vegetables to pickle. And if the vegetable is cut thick, for example, like a radish, like this, it will take longer for the pickle flavor to absorb into the vegetable. So that will impact how long it needs to sit in that pickle. But in terms of making the actual pickling liquid, there's a few options. The traditional way, which is a little bit more labor intensive and I guess what I would say is more traditional is that you take liquid, which is any kind of vinegar, usually white vinegar, red wine vinegar is good, a rice wine vinegar is good as well, but a rice wine vinegar is very mellow. So you have to be aware what vinegar you're using, what flavor profile you like, and the best way to know that is just taste them. You know, red wine vinegar is the same price usually as that vinegar, as white wine vinegar. And in the recipe book, I've kind of outlined some of the vinegars that work really well, okay? And that's in the recipe. So I want to show you guys first, before I get too much into the demo, if you have something like a thin red onion, which I've sliced really thin here, all right, in order to pickle that, believe it or not, all right, something as simple as just red wine vinegar, and just cover it. Cover it completely with the red wine vinegar or any vinegar of your choice. And 15 minutes later, that'll be a pickled red onion. It'll soften. That sharpness of the onion will go away. And you'll be left with this really pleasant pickled red onion. And what it's really great for, sandwiches, a side on a dish of roast beef with potatoes. And basically what it does is it makes it a really easy vegetable to eat on the side quickly at home without having to let it sit in the refrigerator for a week or 2 days for the time it takes to pickle. So I guess what I'm trying to inspire here is that you don't have to think of pickling as a very long process. If you're strategic about how you cut your vegetable, you can pickle in literally 15 minutes to an hour. So the first thing you do when you're cooking your meal is get your pickling going. Someone's in trouble. Get your pickling going and put it aside and let it go. So what I've done is I've just done that in this case. We're going to be up here for about 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is just kind of let those kind of do its thing. I've also got one started already. And we'll come back to those and we'll see what change has happened in the onion in just 10 or 15 minutes. That's a quick pickle, okay? So then to take that to another level and kind of get beyond the thin sliced red onion, you can pickle fruit. Nobody ever thinks to pickle a strawberry, right? Kind of a crazy idea. But if the pickling liquid, whether it be the vinegar and the sugar combined, goes well, it actually makes for a beautiful ingredient. And you can use it in a lot of different ways. So fruit is not off limits. Pineapple, and then of course radish. So I've just got a few things there to kind of give you guys all an idea of just, that's a cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar is a really good vinegar to pickle with. Probably my favorite. So that's, again, in the recipe book. We've made a very simple guide. So what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of get you guys involved, and I'm going to kind of use what I've got here, and we're going to do a real quick pickle. All right? Then I'm going to show you a bit of a longer pickle. And then we're going to sample some pickles. All right? So, to get started, basically all you need to do, mason jar. Now, what do we want to pickle? I've got radish, cucumber, pineapple, and strawberry. I'll try some fruit. So general rule is that you kind of only want to pickle one thing at a time. So it's fine to have a bit of onion with a cucumber, but you generally don't want to mix, you know, pineapple with strawberry and cucumber. Just stick with one and do it. In this case, I'm going to mix them just because it's going to look cool. But it's not something that's generally you do. You generally just go with one. But imagine me just going with one thing here. Basically, I'm going to fill the jar. Make sure that jar is full. So whatever ingredient you're using, fill the jar. Step one. So I'm almost full. All right? And I'll throw in a few radishes just to fill it up. So traditionally speaking, in order to make a pickling liquid, a lot of times it's put on to heat. So you got your vinegar gets heated up to boil with sugar and any seasonings and flavors you want to add to it. In this case, we're not going to bother with any heat or any pots or anything. We're basically just going to take that. How about we do cider vinegar? So we just take the vinegar, and again, this can be anything. It can be fruit, vegetables. You can change the cut size depending on how long you want it to pickle, how much you want to pickle, or how you enjoy eating it. All up to you. You basically just fill it right up with vinegar and make sure that it's to the top of whatever you got in that jar, okay? Easy, all right? Chop it, put it in a jar, cover it in vinegar. That's your start. Once you got that, you need to sweeten it. So, I got sugar. I knew I was missing something. So sugar. So in the pickling guide, I've got down, as you can see here, make your brine. So in step 2, make your brine. So we got vinegar, water, sugar, and salt. So if I wanted to make that less intense, I could just go up to there with vinegar and then top the rest up with water. Okay? But it's your choice. I prefer to go straight to the top with vinegar. But if you don't like that strong pickling, you can dilute it with a little bit of water. Okay? So you've got your vinegar, water, sugar, and salt. So next is sugar, because we got vinegar in here. So the sugar is about a tablespoon at a time until you're happy with it. All right, it really is about taste, but it's as simple as just putting sugar in. So I think that's a good amount of sugar. That's about 2 tablespoons there. Okay, so you just put your sugar right in. A little bit of salt. Imagine I've got salt. Oh, hang on, here's some salt. Just a little bit of seasoning and salt. And this is the fun part. This is just where it's as simple as this. Just like making a margarita, you know? Or a martini, I should say, sorry. I saw that look like, that's not a margarita. And basically what you're doing with the shaking, all right, is you're kind of imitating the heat dissolving the sugar. So you're basically shaking it to get that sugar to dissolve into the cider vinegar. And then the salt is the seasoning, and the water can dilute it for you based on your own preference, okay? So we shake that up. And what you've got is pickled strawberry and pineapple and radish in a jar. And you let that stay in your fridge overnight, one night, and you've got pickled vegetables. That's simple. All right, and that's kind of a cheat way to do pickling. All right, it's very simple. No heat, no nothing. Just fill the jar, top it, shake it. If you want to take it to a next level, and you actually want to bottle it and seal it and store it, well, that's where I recommend you actually heat your brine. Okay? So this is a quick pickling method. We quick pickle these by just simply slicing them thin and covering them in red onion. 15 minutes to an hour, they'll be done. That's a quick pickle. This one here, we took whatever we were interested in, we cut it up, we filled the jar top with vinegar, sugar, salt, shook it up, done. Let it go in the fridge overnight, quick pickle. No worries, no hassles. But if you're going to bottle, like we've done these and we've bottled them, those are sealed, those can stay on your counter or in your fridge. If you want to do that, then you have to take that same vinegar, sugar, salt combination and heat it. And get that going to a boil, and then add that hot over instead of the cold. And all the sugar will already be dissolved. So you're just going to pour that over, and then you go through a bottling process. And we showed that in an earlier demo with the jams and jellies. So basically, when you're bottling something like this, if that liquid was hot and I had that boiled on the stove, you'd want to submerge that in hot water, boiling hot water, in a pot. And you'd want to make sure that the pot is a pot that's for bottling. And those usually have, we have one here, but they have a grate that goes in the very bottom. So it keeps the bottom of the jar off the bottom of the pot. So it's not a direct heat because the glass will shatter. So it's elevated, it's covered in water, and you always want to cover it by at least 4 or 5 inches. Bring it to a full boil, and about an hour later, turn it off, let the water come out, and that'll seal. And then you've got bottled, you can put it on your shelf, it's good for a couple of years. All right? So this is more of a quick pickle to kind of show how you can do it before dinner, or you can do it a day before, no heat required, no fuss, no muss. That's the kind of focus of this demo. But if you're going to pickle in a way like we're going to sample here, with some beets and some pickled red onion and some cucumbers, you definitely want to basically just, again, I'll illustrate here. So pot on the stove. We'll use white vinegar this time. So you just bring a little bit of white vinegar up to a boil. Add a little bit of sugar. And the same principle applies. All right? Take a bottle, fill it up. And that's, you know, we'll put this hot pickling liquid right in there, and that heat is what's needed in order for it to seal. So that's why you want to heat that, okay? And that's only if you're bottling. So that's kind of a tip for, you know, if you're going to bottle, make sure you heat the brine. If you're going to do a quick one that you just want the next day, and you're going to eat it, and it's something specific you got in your fridge, and you want to, it's starting to, you know, get at that edge, and you want to keep it and pickle it and change it and do something different with it, and do this quick pickle like this with a good shake, get that sugar dissolved, put it back in your fridge, next day it'll be a whole new vegetable, right? And then you can have it for about 4 or 5 days. It's good to eat. If you want to go longer and shelf store, then we're going to get into boiling this, get that in there hot, get that into hot water, and about an hour, all right? And make sure it's well covered. Make sure you clean your edge before you put on your top. And another thing is a lot of people screw on the top really tight. Don't do that. Just till it comes to a nice, comfortable place. There's no need to really crank on it, okay? What's going to happen is the air is going to push out as it gets hot. It's going to get rid of all the air in that bottle. Bubbles will start to come up the edge. And then all of a sudden, bam, it'll seal. And once it's sealed, you're laughing, okay? So these are sealed. And one way to tell, right, that's not sealed, so it's got that, you know, same as the grocery store stuff, and that's sealed. So this would be a quick pickle. Again, for overnight, this would be a long storage on the shelf. So that's as quick as that. That's come to a boil. So this is the part where I want to talk about flavorings. I skipped over that, but if you want to add flavorings to that, you can add chili peppers, turmeric, celery seeds. I've given a list in the recipe book of different flavor combinations. You just add those right in and give that a shake as well, okay? In this case, with the vinegar one, I'm going to add a little bit of chilies. That's a lot of chilies, just so you know. And probably a little bit of mustard seed. Mustard seed, coriander seed, cumin seed, all those seeds are really good for pickling. Really good. Bulk burn, super cheap. You only need a little bit, and it'll make things pop with flavor. And you'll get to taste that now in a second with these. The flavor is the pickle, but it's got all these nuances of celery seed and coriander seed and cumin seed, and it really changes the vegetable in a really kind of positive way, in my opinion. This is an Indian spice that we pre-made. So again, this is just cold vinegar, sugar, salt. I've got a pre-made spice mix. Get that shook up. Fridge overnight, again, beautiful, right? Easy. So now that that's come to a boil, imagine that being packed full. Shake that off the heat. That is hot, just so everybody knows. Don't put your fingers on that, anybody, it's hot. I just burned mine, just so you all know. And then you just basically cover it, okay? So all that heat in there now is going to push all that air out. You get that on there and you put that in a pot, cover it with water, and that'll seal after about an hour. So those are 3 kind of very, very quick, simple, easy ways to pickle. So you've got the hot method, you've got the quick method in terms of slicing something really thin and just putting vinegar over it, and you got the overnight way of just putting it in a bottle, shaking it all up, adding your flavor combinations, letting it sit overnight. And I tell you what, there's a lot of times I find myself, single guy, go to the grocery store, I buy something I want to cook, I cook it, and then I'm left with a bunch of those ingredients. And I know I don't really have any plans to do anything with them. So I will do a quick pickle like that. I'll just put them all in a jar and cover it with vinegar, put some sugar in, put whatever flavor, shake it up and put it back in my fridge. And I know then that when I go to eat whatever, I'll probably use that as an accompaniment or a condiment for whatever I'm eating. But it means I'm not throwing that food away. It means I'm not letting that food rot. And it's so quick. And it's nice to always have these bottles around the house. I always use them even to drink out of sometimes. So it's just as quick as to grab it, pack it, and just make it. And I've done a really kind of quick and simple guide here that I think if you follow will inspire you for your own flavor combinations and just give you that base guideline as to how to get started. So a lot of the popular vegetables I've listed there and kind of the best way to slice them or cut them. So all that's in the book. It's a really handy guide. And then later on in the book, you'll notice there's 2 recipes for the pickled red onion and for the bread and butter pickles. Okay, and that's what we're going to sample today. There's a recipe in the book for both those. Does anybody have any questions about the pickling or about the bottling process? I know that sometimes. The reasoning of the bottles is one of the benefits of having those bottles. Well, I think the issue with that is, and I don't know where you're buying your bottles, but I noticed lately that a lot of the big chains are selling kind of cheaper bottles. And those cheaper bottles, you can usually, when you look at them, you can see a seal, as if the 2 glass has been put together in 2 pieces, right? And when you buy those bottles, they're more prone to crack. So in my opinion, you're better off spending the extra $2 or $3 and getting the proper bottle, the Bernadine bottles. And those are the ones that aren't as cheap, right? They're about 20% more expensive, but they're not going to split on you, all right? Yeah, they're Harvest something. Even the packaging looks cheaper, right? Those will split on you for sure. But as for reusing them, it's glass. You're not giving it enough heat for it to do anything, right? So what you do need to do is replace your lids, right? Because the seals go on them. But the bottles, you really should have, no issues, okay? So I don't know if we went 15 minutes, but if I let these go for an hour, they'll change even more. But it's certainly a really quick way. Now, I do this at home a lot for sandwiches. You do a roast beef sandwich with a little bit of cheddar cheese, you throw on some of those pickled onions, and you've changed your sandwich. It's not the same anymore. It's elevated to a whole other level just by taking a few sliced red onions and covering them in vinegar, all right, and letting them sit. So that's kind of I love that recipe. I think it's a good one. And I think that if you actually give it the time that it needs, I wish those were there a little longer. I apologize for that. But we will taste them regardless. And go from there. Any other questions about the bottling process? I know that's a bit, I kind of skimmed through it. We kind of went in a little more detail in an earlier demo, but I could certainly talk about it. But these pickles here are delicious. I don't know if you like bread and butter pickles out there as an audience. Well, that's kind of your thing. So, I pop that, and now that is, and the smell, sure. About 2 years.